Under the vaulted observation dome of Arena Theta 9, the air hummed with restrained disdain. Alien generals from a dozen species filled the semicircle of command seats, their various bioluminescent eyes fixed on the holographic battlefield below. The planet's surface, terraformed desert, stone canyons, and flickering plasma storms, sprawled in miniature across the center of the room, a living map of simulated warfare. Every observer carried the same expression: amusement, disbelief, or quiet irritation. They had all come to watch the latest addition to the Galactic War Academy's roster fail spectacularly. General Korthves of the Dralken clacked his mandibles in impatience. "The Deathworlders are late," he rasped, his voice like grinding coral. "Perhaps they already surrendered." Sensible, if primitive. A few others emitted chuckles, wet, clicking sounds that echoed off the alloyed walls. Across from him, Admiral Catal of the Thaluan leaned forward, tongue flicking between razor teeth. "Surrender," he hissed. "They lack the wisdom for that. They'll die performing one of their ridiculous heroics." The laughter swelled, rich with condescension. Only one observer refrained. High Strategist Dorinval adjusted his crystalline monocle and watched the flickering teleportation sigils on the map. "Mock them if you wish," he murmured, "but I have studied their history. Deathworlders thrive where logic says life should not exist." The teleportation beacons flared. 4 human cadets materialized in a burst of white light upon the blood-red dunes of Theta 9. Their armor gleamed matte black beneath the harsh sun, dust swirling around their boots. Each carried the angular insignia of Earth Sol Academy on their breastplates. At their head stood Cadet Commander Rourke Hale, tall, lean, with the kind of posture that made arrogance look like discipline. His helmet remained unclasped, revealing eyes the color of steel and a jaw that looked carved for command. Beside him trudged Lieutenant Mason Dre, broader, quieter, the kind of man whose words carried the weight of rare use. Corporal Tane Briggs checked the drone controls on his wrist gauntlet, muttering to himself with nervous precision, while Specialist Aaron Vex slung a pack overloaded with tools and parts scavenged from previous drills. Rourke surveyed the alien terrain without expression. "All right, gentlemen," he said, his tone casual yet precise. 3 days. No resupply. No air support. Win this, and Earth gets a seat at the table. Lose, and we go home as a bad joke. Mason cracked a grin. "Guess we'd better make it a funny one." Even through the distortion field, the alien generals could hear them. Korth's mandibles twitched in irritation. "They jest before combat? They are children." "Children," Dorinval replied, "with fire in their blood." Rourke's gaze swept the horizon. The dunes shifted restlessly under cyclonic winds, and in the far distance shimmered the jagged outline of the first objective marker, a defunct relay tower that would serve as command uplink once restored. He pointed toward it. "We move. Dre, scout the ridge. Briggs, deploy sensors. Vex, keep our comms from frying in this electromagnetic circus." They moved like parts of a single machine, efficient, wordless, alert. Sand rasped against their armor as the heat shimmered. Rourke felt the environment pressing against his lungs, the simulation's cruelty designed to mimic real Deathworld conditions. He smiled faintly. Home, he thought. From the observation dome, Admiral Catal observed their pattern. Their formation is wrong. They leave gaps. They expose their flanks. Dorinval's crystalline fingers tapped the console. Or they invite pursuit. On the ground, the humans reached the base of the ridge when the first enemy contact appeared, sleek metallic figures emerging from the dust, drones designed to mimic the combat behavior of the Esrax Legion, one of the galaxy's most relentless species. The ambush came without warning, plasma bolts scarring the air in streaks of blue-white fire. Rourke didn't shout. He moved. "Down!" he barked, and the others responded instantly. Briggs dropped a microcharge into the sand, detonating it seconds later in a burst of concussive force that sent dust and shrapnel skyward. Dre rolled to one knee and picked off 2 drones with precise bursts from his rifle. Vex ducked behind a dune, his fingers dancing over a handheld console, hijacking the nearest drone's targeting subroutine. From above, alien voices murmured. "They react faster than algorithmic combatants," Korth muttered, his tone darkening. "How?" They don't calculate, Doreen Vile said softly. They improvise. The fight ended as quickly as it had begun. 4 humans, standing amid scattered wreckage, breathing hard but alive. Rourke wiped a smear of dust from his visor and glanced toward the ridge. That was a test, he said. Someone up there's laughing. Good, Dre answered. Let's give them more to laugh at. They reached the relay tower as the simulated sun dipped low, painting the dunes in molten orange. The structure loomed ahead, broken spires of alien alloy, half buried in sand, still humming faintly with residual power. Vex knelt beside the terminal, tools flashing. Give me 2 minutes, he said. Maybe 3 if the AI core's fried. Make it 2, Rourke replied. He scanned the perimeter, eyes narrowing. Briggs, sensors? Clean for now, Briggs said, though uncertainty shaded his tone. But the readings keep spiking. Could be storms. Could be movement. In the command dome, Admiral Catal's tail twitched. They do not entrench. They do not fortify. What strategy is this? Adaptation, Doreen Vile answered again. They move before the enemy understands their intent. They turn disadvantage into momentum. A storm front rolled over the desert, swallowing the horizon in electric haze. The wind howled across the relay tower, rattling loose panels like bones. Vex cursed under his breath, sparks flaring as he forced a connection. Got it, he said finally. Signal relay reactivated. Transmit log 1, Rourke ordered. His voice echoed through the static. Human detachment, day 1, Theta 9. Hostile contact neutralized. Objective 1 secure. Commencing advance to secondary target. In the dome, silence followed the report. Alien generals exchanged glances, discomfort stirring where arrogance had been. Korth shifted uneasily. They speak as if this were not a trial but a campaign. Perhaps, Doreen Vile said, for them every battle is both. The simulation's sun vanished behind the storm, plunging the desert into copper twilight. Rourke motioned for the team to form a perimeter. Lightning danced across the dunes, illuminating their armor in momentary flashes of brilliance. First day's barely begun, Dre said quietly. Then let's make it count, Rourke replied. He looked up at the swirling clouds where he knew, miles above, the alien council watched. He raised his chin slightly, a gesture of deliberate defiance. Eyes up, gentlemen, he murmured. The galaxy's watching. And somewhere high above, in the sterile calm of the observation dome, a dozen alien generals leaned forward, realization dawning in their varied eyes that this exercise would not unfold as they expected. The storm swallowed the horizon. The humans vanished into it like shadows returning to their natural element, leaving only the hum of the relay tower and the uneasy silence of those who watched. The first night on Theta 9 began with silence, the kind that feels deliberate, like the planet itself was holding its breath. Then the wind screamed. It howled through the canyons, dragging sheets of red sand across the dunes until visibility shrank to arm's length. Within that living storm, 4 human silhouettes huddled behind a low ridge, armor lit only by the faint glow of their helmet hoods. The temperature had dropped 50 degrees in less than an hour, and the electromagnetic static drowned out all long-range comms. The simulation didn't need enemies tonight, the world itself was trying to kill them. Rourke Hale crouched over a flickering tactical display, his gloved hands steady despite the chaos around him. He'd seen worse storms back home, the kind that stripped paint off steel and tossed vehicles like toys. But his men, these cadets who had only ever known battle in simulation pods, were being tested in a crucible more honest than any classroom. He needed them to learn fast or die trying. Briggs, he called through the comm channel, voice distorted but clear enough. Perimeter sensors still holding. Barely, Briggs answered. He was half buried in sand, coaxing power from a salvaged drone battery. The static's frying half the network. I can reroute through short-range bursts, but we'll be blind in 10 minutes if this keeps up. 10 minutes is a lifetime, Rourke said. Make it work. Mason Dre wiped grit from his rifle scope, squinting into the storm. No movement, he said. Not yet. But this silence isn't natural. Someone's waiting for us to blink first. Vex sat beside the remains of a shattered Recon drone, its core exposed like a dissected insect. Sparks leapt across his gauntlets as he worked. "Someone is already watching," he muttered. "I can feel the pinging, low frequency, repeating. They're probing our position." Rourke looked up toward the storm's flashing edge. "Then let them find us," he said quietly. "They'll regret it." In the observation dome above, alien generals leaned closer to their consoles as human biosigns pulsed dimly through the interference. General Korth clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. "The Deathworlders are trapped. The storm is a natural isolator. No species has survived a full night exposed on Theta 9. Yet they do not retreat," Doran Vile replied. He zoomed in on the feed. "They reinforce." Below, the humans set to work. Briggs deployed micromines in an outward semicircle, embedding them beneath the sand. Vex tethered his wrist console to Mason's rifle scope, creating a shared targeting grid. Rourke divided his focus between scanning for enemies and studying the environment's shifting pattern of lightning strikes. Every burst of static revealed something: a glimmer, a silhouette, the faint movement of mechanical limbs cresting a dune. "Contact," Mason said suddenly, voice low. 3 o'clock. Range 100 meters and closing. "Drones?" Rourke asked. "Bigger," Mason replied. "Warforms. Looks like simulated Jarrak infantry." Rourke didn't hesitate. "Hold fire until they're in the kill zone." He crouched lower, sand piling against his armor. The wind drowned all other sound except the distant, rhythmic thump of heavy footsteps. The shapes resolved through the storm, towering constructs of alloy and polymer, glowing with blue plasma veins. The alien generals watched, confident this would end the simulation quickly. Then the dunes erupted. Briggs' buried mines detonated in a precise chain, each explosion feeding the next until the entire ridge became a storm of molten sand and debris. The advancing warforms staggered, shields flaring, but the humans were already moving. Mason fired through the haze, each shot a pulse of disciplined control, never wasteful. Vex jammed enemy sensors, painting false signatures that sent half the warforms spinning their weapons in the wrong direction. From above, the alien council fell silent. The Deathworlders were not retreating, they were advancing through their own explosions, silhouettes emerging from the inferno like wraiths. Rourke vaulted onto a half-melted drone chassis, rifle barking bursts of energy into exposed joints. His visor reflected the electric blue chaos, but his voice remained calm. "Dre, left flank. Briggs, cut the uplink and draw them downfield. Vex, feed me their targeting lag." "On it!" Briggs shouted, sprinting through the sand as plasma fire chased his heels. Vex's fingers blurred over the console. "Lag sent. You've got a 4-second window." Rourke took it. He surged forward, dove under a sweeping plasma blade, and jammed a charge against the warform's chest. The explosion tore it apart, fragments raining around him. He landed hard, rolled, and came up aiming at another target. When the smoke finally cleared, half the enemy force lay twisted and smoking across the dunes. The others retreated beyond sensor range, their command AI recalculating. The humans regrouped, panting, armor-scorched and sand-caked. Mason let out a low whistle. "That was supposed to be a test, right? What do we call this?" Rourke reloaded calmly. "Practice." In the dome, Admiral Kaital's tail lashed irritably. "They waste energy. They risk everything for spectacle." "Not spectacle," Doran Vile said softly. "Message. They are showing us how Deathworlders survive, not through advantage, but through audacity." As the night deepened, the storm grew colder. The humans found refuge in a hollowed canyon where the wind cut less sharply. Briggs set up motion beacons while Mason stacked broken drone parts into a crude barricade. The flickering light from Vex's portable torch painted their faces in alternating amber and shadow. Rourke stood apart, surveying the canyon mouth. His armor was dented along one shoulder, but he ignored it. He'd learned long ago that pain was just another input to process. "We're alive," he said finally. "That's day one's real victory." Briggs chuckled wearily. "Feels more like surviving a nightmare." "Exactly," Rourke replied. "Now we make the nightmare theirs." They ate their ration paste in silence. Every man stared into the dim firelight, each lost in thought. Mason finally broke the quiet. You ever think about what they see when they look at us? Animals, Briggs muttered. Tools, Vex added without looking up. Rourke's gaze flicked toward the invisible sky. Both, he said. But by the time this is over, they'll see something else, something they can't define but won't ever forget. The others nodded. There was no bravado left, just conviction carved into bone. Above them, the alien observers watched as human vitals stabilized, as if their bodies were adjusting to the planet's cruelty rather than succumbing to it. General Korth shifted uncomfortably. They adapt too quickly. It shouldn't be possible. Dorinval's crystalline fingers tightened around his monocle. That's what Deathworlders do, General. They don't conquer environments, they make them yield. Hours passed. The storm finally broke near dawn, unveiling a sky of bruised violet. The battlefield lay transformed, dunes flattened, wreckage half buried, the relay tower they'd secured now a black silhouette against the horizon. Rourke rose, brushing sand from his armor. The air crackled faintly with residual static, and his HUD flickered with warning symbols. Movement blips reappeared on the scanner, hundreds of them, converging. Looks like they've decided to take this seriously, Mason said. Rourke's lips curved into the faintest smile. Good. I was getting bored. He turned to his team, voice steady but low. We hold this ground until they understand who we are. No running, no hiding. If they want to break us, they'll have to bleed for every inch. Briggs snapped his visor down. 3 days, Commander. 3 days, Rourke confirmed. His eyes caught the rising sun, its light slicing through the haze like a blade. Let's make sure it's the longest 3 days of their lives. Up in the observation dome, the alien generals watched in uneasy silence. The humans' heat signatures flared bright as they moved into formation, preparing for the next assault. Admiral Catal exhaled a long, rattling breath. They mean to fight an army with 4 men. No, Dorinval corrected quietly, eyes gleaming. They mean to win. The feed flickered as another storm rolled over the horizon, its lightning illuminating the human squad one last time before swallowing them whole. The alien council sat in stunned silence, the echo of the Deathworlder's defiance lingering in the static long after the image vanished. By the second dawn, Arena Theta 9 was no longer a battlefield, it was a graveyard of machines. The crimson dunes lay scarred with blackened craters, twisted metal, and faint plumes of smoke that rose into the violet sky. 4 human figures moved among the wreckage, methodical and silent, their armor dulled by ash. Every step crunched over the remnants of the previous night's assault. The storm had passed, but something heavier lingered, the awareness that they were now being studied not as participants, but as a threat. Rourke Hale crouched beside the mangled carcass of a warform, examining the fractures along its torso. These weren't standard Jarek designs, he said, tapping the alloy with the butt of his rifle. They are adapting to us. Vex ran a scan from his wrist console. Confirmed. New composite structure, upgraded response algorithms. The simulation AI must be rewriting itself based on our tactics. Mason Dre spat into the sand, his voice carrying through the comms. So the game learns. Fine. We'll teach it new tricks. Briggs knelt nearby, gathering drone fragments into a neat pile. His movements were slow, deliberate. If it's rewriting its playbook, Commander, it means we're winning. Or it means, Rourke replied, standing, it's scared. Above them, the alien generals watched from the dome in grim fascination. The human vitals flickered steady green against the chaos of the map, while enemy markers multiplied exponentially. General Korthves's claws clicked nervously against his console. The AI has escalated to level 9 simulation parameters. That mode is reserved for advanced command trials, not cadets. Admiral Catal's scaled hands flexed. Then we'll see what breaks first, them or the system. Dorinval said nothing. His crystalline eyes tracked the 4 small signals with the focus of a man witnessing something irreversible. On the ground, Rourke led his squad along the canyon edge toward the next objective marker. The mission parameters had changed at dawn, seize the uplink fortress at grid delta before sunset. It was a feint, of course. The alien observers didn't expect them to capture anything, they only wanted to measure how long humans could resist overwhelming force. Rourke had no intention of playing defense. They reached a plateau overlooking the enemy formation, a mechanical convoy stretching for kilometers, armored transports, drone carriers, and walking artillery platforms. Even from this height, the heat shimmer from their plasma cores made the air dance. Mason exhaled softly. That's half a battalion. Correction, Vex said, his eyes scanning data feeds. 2 battalions, if you count the rear column. Briggs whistled under his breath. And we've got 4 rifles, a few charges, and Vex's bad attitude. Which, Rourke said, makes the odds about even. He traced a line across the tactical map. We don't fight the army, we fight the terrain. Canyon here, ridge here. The mechs rely on line of sight and synchronized targeting. We cut their signal chain, we turn the mountain into a coffin. Vex raised an eyebrow. You're suggesting an ambush big enough to collapse the ridge. I'm suggesting we stop surviving, Rourke said, voice low, and start winning. 4 hours they worked under the unrelenting sun. Briggs planted shaped charges along fault lines, calibrating detonators with obsessive care. Mason oversaw the firing lanes, marking ranges by carving symbols into the stone with his knife. Vex hijacked 3 disabled drones, reprogramming their guidance cores into decoy transmitters. Rourke watched the enemy movements, every muscle taut with anticipation. The Alien Council observed the growing silence from the surface feed. They are waiting, Korth muttered. But for what? Doran Vile's expression remained unreadable. For the right moment. By late afternoon, the convoy entered the canyon. Their formation was tight, efficient, a mechanical procession moving in perfect rhythm. The first line of transports crossed the ridge. Then, as if the planet itself drew breath, the world exploded. The ridge disintegrated in a thunderous cascade. Sand and rock erupted skyward, burying the lead vehicles and toppling the war mechs behind them. The blast wave hurled debris like shrapnel across the canyon, tearing through armor plates. From the cliffs, the humans struck. Mason's rifle cracked like thunder, precise and merciless. Briggs triggered the next line of charges, collapsing a second pass and sealing the retreat route. Vex decoys activated, projecting phantom heat signatures that drew enemy fire into empty space. Rourke descended into the chaos, moving like a ghost among giants. Every movement was calculated, every shot deliberate. He wasn't aiming for kills, he was dismantling command hierarchies, severing the logic that kept the machines coherent. In the observation dome, the alien generals leaned forward, mesmerized. They're cutting the network apart manually. Physiology cannot endure the stress parameters. Cathuan's gaze never left Vale, who was standing now, helmet tucked under one arm, looking skyward as though expecting another challenge. His face was smeared with grime, his expression unreadable, a mixture of triumph and exhaustion that bordered on defiance. Not impossible, Cathuan said softly. Just human. He turned to his aides. Bring him to the debriefing chamber. Minutes later, Vale and his surviving team stood before the line of alien generals, the massive chamber heavy with silence. Vale's uniform was torn, his pulse visible in his throat, but his posture was straight, almost proud. General Cathuan stepped forward, his towering frame casting a shadow across the floor. Explain, he said simply. Vale met his gaze. We didn't play by your rules, he said. You trained us to think like you, to ration energy, minimize losses, rely on endurance curves. But that's not how we fight. Cathuan's crystalline eyes glimmered. And how do Deathworlders fight? Vale hesitated, then smiled faintly. We fight to win. Even when it means breaking ourselves to do it. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Cathuan's mandibles flexed slightly, a Valari expression of deep thought. And you do not fear death? Every second, Vale replied. But fear's useful. It keeps you sharp. The alien general studied him for a long time, then inclined his head slightly. You've taught us something today, Cadet Vale. Vale raised an eyebrow. And what's that, sir? Cathuan's voice was low, almost reverent. That survival is not the highest virtue. Will is. For a moment, the entire room was still. The lesson hung heavy in the air, more potent than any military doctrine. The Deathworlders had not just endured, they had reshaped the expectations of their audience. As the cadets were dismissed, Vale turned to his men. Hawk clapped him on the shoulder, grinning through cracked lips. So, we just made history? Vale chuckled softly. Maybe. Or maybe we just reminded them what history feels like. From above, Cthuan watched them leave. His aides whispered anxiously, debating whether the results should be classified. But Cthuan silenced them with a single gesture. No, he said. Let every world see this record. Let them understand what happens when humanity is cornered. He looked once more toward the departing cadets, their gaits steady, their backs unbowed, and for the first time in many cycles, the alien general felt something uncomfortably close to awe. They are not the strongest, he murmured to himself. Not the fastest, nor the most disciplined. But they are the most unbreakable. And as the simulation domes powered down, the last rays of artificial sunlight glinting off the shattered landscape, one undeniable truth remained: across the stars, among civilizations that had long thought themselves superior, the legend of the Deathworlders had begun. K'Tal whispered. No command relay, no AI coordination. Impossible, Korth hissed. They shouldn't even understand how the protocols work. Doran Vile's crystalline voice was quiet but sharp. They don't need to understand. They just observe. And adapt. When the dust settled, the canyon was silent except for the crackle of fires and the hiss of cooling metal. The enemy convoy had ceased moving. Sensors recorded no remaining combat units. Rourke stood amid the wreckage, his armor scorched, breathing hard but steady. Briggs limped toward him, favoring one leg. That all of them? For now, Rourke said. Mason scanned the horizon through his cracked visor. Won't take them long to respawn another army. Simulation protocol guarantees escalation. Good, Rourke replied. Let them come. They regrouped atop the canyon, watching as the sky darkened again. The light from the fires painted their armor in amber tones, making them look less like soldiers and more like figures from some ancient myth. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then Vex broke the silence. You realize we've crossed the expected survival time for any species in this test? Rourke gave a faint nod. Then we've already made history. History doesn't mean much if no one's left to write it, Mason said. Rourke looked out over the horizon where fresh sensor blips appeared like approaching storms. If we die here, he said quietly, then we die proving what it means to be human. That's enough. Up in the dome, Admiral K'Tal's tail lashed against the floor. They treat annihilation as achievement. This is madness. Not madness, Doran Vile replied. Conviction. Night fell. The second day ended in eerie calm, broken only by the distant thrum of new enemy formations assembling. Inside their makeshift camp, the humans sat around a flickering plasma lantern. The glow cast deep shadows across their faces, each marked by fatigue but held upright by grim purpose. Briggs adjusted the last of his leg brace, grimacing. If they hit us before dawn, I'll slow you down. Rourke shook his head. You'll hold your post like always. Nobody's slowing anyone. Vex tightened the connection on his console, murmuring, I can jam their next sensor sweep for maybe 15 minutes, but that's it. After that, we're naked. 15's enough, Mason said, reassembling his rifle. We'll make it count. Rourke's eyes flicked from one man to the next. Listen carefully, he said. Tomorrow isn't about survival. It's about message. Every second we stand, every enemy we break, every rule we ignore, it's a message to them. He nodded upward toward the invisible sky. They think we're reckless. Let's prove we're inevitable. The words settled like a vow. No one replied, but the firelight caught the faint smiles hidden beneath their helmets. In the observation dome, silence reigned. The alien generals watched the 4 human biosignatures pulse steady through the darkness, refusing to fade. General Korth's voice was low, almost reverent now. They're not fighting simulation enemies anymore. They're fighting us. Dorinval turned his crystalline gaze toward the horizon feed, where storm clouds gathered once again. "No," he said softly. "They are teaching us." Outside, the wind began to rise. The sand carried the first tremors of another approaching army, an entire world preparing to crush 4 stubborn humans who refused to yield. And yet, as lightning flashed across the sky, those 4 figures stood their ground, unflinching, shadows carved from defiance itself. The feed dimmed, the storm swallowed their signals, and the galaxy held its breath for what would come next. Under the blistering artificial sun of the simulation's final day, the Deathworlder cadets moved like predators through the mock terrain. The air was thick with dust and static, each footstep sinking slightly into the churned soil. For 3 relentless days, they had been hunted, harried, and pushed to the edge of endurance, and yet, their eyes burned with the sharp focus of creatures born for struggle. General Cathuan of the Valari observed from the high viewing platform, his crystalline eyes narrowing. Around him, the gallery of alien commanders murmured among themselves, unable to reconcile what they were seeing. "They've had no sleep cycle for 32 hours, muttered a reptilian strategist, his scales flashing irritation. "Even our commandos collapse after 20. Cathuan did not respond, his attention was fixed on the human leading the maneuver below, a broad-shouldered cadet named Marcus Vale. Vale had learned to move like a machine under pressure, but his mind was calculating, relentless, alive. He crouched low, scanning the broken ridge before him, his voice a controlled whisper over the comms. "Hawk, perimeter status." "Clear," came the reply, clipped and low. Thermals showed 2 enemy squads moving south, slow, tired, probably out of rations. Vale smirked faintly. "Then they'll take the bait." He nodded to Duran, the youngest of the 4, who was rigging a network of shaped charges beneath the collapsed transport husk. Duran's hands trembled slightly, but not from fear, fatigue, maybe, or the weight of knowing how many simulations had failed before this one. Still, he set the final charge and gave a short nod. "They'll think it's shelter," Vale murmured, eyes gleaming. "We'll hit them from the north and west. Short burst, conserve rounds. Hawk, you're on overwatch." From the observation deck, Cathuan's claw flexed against the rail. "They've learned flanking tactics that mimic advanced Valari encirclement doctrine," he muttered. "But their coordination is intuitive. They don't require constant telemetry." General Torvash, the insectoid commander beside him, clicked his mandibles. "Intuitive? Reckless, more like. They adapt because they can't plan. They succeed because they have no fear of dying." Cathuan said nothing, but deep within, a seed of discomfort stirred. Recklessness did not explain the precision with which Vale moved his men into position, nor the patience with which they waited, motionless, in the heat. These were not the actions of mad creatures courting death. They were hunters waiting for the right moment. The trap sprung with terrifying beauty. The enemy column, composed of synthetic units programmed to emulate a Valari infantry squad, approached the wrecked transport exactly as Vale predicted. The detonation ripped through the air in a concussive wave, shredding armor and sending debris skyward. Before the echoes even faded, Vale's team opened fire. Controlled bursts, perfectly timed. The ambush lasted 18 seconds. Every synthetic target was neutralized. "Confirmed kills across all units," Hawk reported calmly. "Ammo low. We've got one last charge left." Vale exhaled slowly, scanning the distant ridgeline. "Then we finish this." When the smoke cleared, a silence fell over the observation gallery. For the first time in the simulation's long history, a Deathworlder team had survived all 3 days, without external support, without replenishment, and without surrendering their position once. Cathuan rose slowly. "They won't survive another assault," he said, though the words sounded uncertain even to him. "Incorrect," replied the simulation's overseer AI. "Scenario parameters complete. Human victory recorded." The gallery erupted in disbelieving chatter. Torvash slammed a clawed fist against the rail. "Impossible. There.